It started with the sound of metal, clanking, drilling, and the sharp snap of something being bolted into the earth. Daniel Morgan wasn't expecting company. It was 6:15 a.m. The sky over Texas was still brushing pinks against the ridgeline when he looked out his kitchen window, coffee in hand, and saw it. A fence, a tall, bright white composite fence, stretching from one corner of his pasture and crawling along the property line like a plastic scar. 3 men in neon vests were installing it, post by post, like they owned the place. Daniel's hand tightened around his mug. He stepped outside in his boots and flannel, still in pajama pants, the gravel crunching under his weight as he marched across the yard. "Excuse me," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "What the hell is this?" One of the workers looked up. "Per order of the Homeowners Association, sir. We're just doing the install." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "This is private land. My land. You're on the wrong property." The man shrugged. "Says here it's within HOA jurisdiction. You can call the office if there's an issue." And just like that, they went back to work. Daniel stared at the fence for a long second, then turned and stormed inside. He grabbed the binder from above the fridge, the one labeled Deed and Boundaries, and yanked out the latest survey. There was no mistake. That stretch of land wasn't even close to HOA territory, not by a long shot. His phone buzzed. A message from Janice Lubbock, HOA president. "The new perimeter enhancements are going in today. Please refrain from interfering. You'll be reimbursed with community benefit credits." Daniel blinked. "Community what?" His thumbs fired off a reply. "You have 10 minutes to get your fence off my land before I call the sheriff." No response. 10 minutes passed. 15. Nothing. And by the time he returned to the fence line, the entire east pasture where his horses grazed had been sliced in half. The animals were agitated, confused. One had already cut its leg on the exposed post edge. Daniel grabbed bolt cutters. He stepped to the nearest post and stopped. 3 HOA board members had pulled up in a golf cart. Janice Lubbock hopped out, clipboard in hand, her pearls gleaming even in the morning light. "Mr. Morgan," she said coolly, "you're making this far more dramatic than necessary." Daniel looked at her, dumbfounded. "You just fenced off a quarter of my ranch." She didn't flinch. "It's for the beautification of the community. The board approved it. You were notified." "I wasn't notified," he shot back. "You were emailed," she said, flipping her papers. "We included it in the monthly bulletin." "I don't even belong to the HOA," Daniel growled. "This property was exempt when I bought it. It's agricultural. It's not even zoned residential." "Well," Janice sniffed, "it is now." That's when he knew this wasn't a mistake. This was a power move, and it had just become personal. Daniel Morgan had lived on that ranch for nearly 12 years. 5 acres of red Texas soil, just outside the sprawl of the new Cypress Hollow estates. He bought the land before the subdivision even had paved roads or street signs. Back then, it was just scrub and deer. He built his house with his own 2 hands, raised the barn himself. The porch faced west for sunsets. The chickens roamed freely. And the pasture, that was sacred ground, where his late wife had taught their daughter how to ride before cancer took her. Daniel never liked HOAs. Too many rules, too many nosy people with not enough land of their own trying to tell you what to do with yours. So when Cypress Hollow started expanding and tried to annex surrounding lots, Daniel fought back. And he won. At least, that's what he thought. His property had been grandfathered in. No dues, no oversight, no meetings. The HOA line stopped exactly 20 feet from his mailbox. Until now, over the past year, he'd started noticing changes. A new speed bump installed right outside his driveway without notice. HOA flyers shoved into his mailbox, inviting him to community garden planning meetings. Complaints about the excessive number of livestock on his land. And once, a letter suggesting that his barn red paint clashed with neighborhood aesthetic harmony. He laughed it off, mostly. But Janice Lubbock wasn't just the HOA president. She was the kind of woman who smiled like a politician and played chess like a lawyer. She ran the neighborhood like a suburban monarchy. People feared her. Daniel didn't. And that made him a problem. He wasn't the only one on the outskirts of HOA jurisdiction. A few other ranchers and retirees still lived beyond the neatly paved cul-de-sacs and mailboxes with custom ironwork. But Daniel's land, His was closest to the creek that the HOA wanted to turn into a recreational nature trail. Rumor was they were trying to reclaim land for a future community park. They didn't own the land, but that never stopped Janice before. Once she decided something was for the good of the neighborhood, she bulldozed anyone in her path. With policies, bylaws, and smiley-face threats, Daniel had ignored the warning signs, thought they wouldn't dare touch his ranch. But now, with that fence digging into his land and the HOA board acting like it was just part of the plan, he realized something. This wasn't about landscaping. This was a quiet invasion. That night, he sat on the porch, watching the lights from the newly fenced-in trail sparkle like landmines across his field. His daughter Lily came outside with 2 cups of tea. She was home from college, pre-law, just like her mom wanted. "Dad," she said softly, handing him the mug, "I read the HOA manual, the updated one." He looked over. "They changed it?" "Yup. They voted last month to expand jurisdiction to properties within community visual boundaries. That includes our front pasture. They snuck it in through an emergency clause, buried it under pet waste policy." Daniel laughed bitterly. "Classic Janice." "There's more," Lily said. "They reclassified your lot as mixed-use transitional. It gives them temporary authority to implement cosmetic enhancements if it benefits long-term cohesion." Daniel set the tea down slowly. "So they can do whatever they want." Lily nodded. He stood up. "No, sweetheart. They think they can." That was when he made the decision. He wasn't just going to cut down the fence. He was going to bring down the whole damn circus. The next morning, Daniel was up before dawn. He wasn't angry anymore. He was focused. With tape measure in hand, he walked the perimeter. Every step was documented, every measurement photographed. The fence cut 16 feet into his legal boundary. It wasn't just overreach. It was trespassing. He called the sheriff's office, spoke calmly, filed a report. But when Deputy Mark Rollins showed up later that afternoon, he was less than helpful. "Look, Dan," he said, tugging at his belt, "these HOA folks got their own kind of rules. This might be a civil issue." Daniel handed him the survey. "This is my land, Mark, not theirs. That fence isn't just an eyesore, it's a violation." Mark scratched his head. "I'll file the paperwork, but don't go tearing it down just yet, all right? Let's not make a scene." A scene? He wasn't the one who built a wall across someone's land at sunrise. But Daniel nodded. He'd seen this before. Small towns didn't like conflict, especially not with people like Janice. Later that week, flyers started appearing around Cypress Hollow. HOA branded, printed in color, stuffed into every mailbox. "Community Compliance Spotlight, Mr. Daniel Morgan's property." The flyer included photos of his barn, his tool shed, and even Lily's car, parked on the grass. "Help us maintain beauty and safety for all residents." Daniel crumpled the paper. It was war. The next day, HOA members arrived with clipboards. Janice wasn't alone this time. She brought 2 board members, Greg Simmons, the silent guy who always nodded, and Brenda Chavez, who never looked anyone in the eye. They didn't ask permission. They walked straight onto Daniel's land, pointing at things, writing notes. Daniel approached them, slow and steady. "This is private property," he said firmly. "You're trespassing." Janice didn't look up. "We're conducting an environmental inspection. Section 4B allows us to assess nearby properties for runoff impact." "Nearby," he echoed. "You mean mine?" She smiled faintly. "We're just doing our job, Mr. Morgan." Daniel pulled out his phone, started recording. "Go ahead," Janice said, brushing her hair from her face. "We have nothing to hide." The camera caught everything. Her smugness, the condescension, the way she waved off legal boundaries like they were speed bumps. "You're going to regret this," Daniel told her. Janice didn't flinch. "I doubt it." 2 days later, a code violation notice arrived. Unauthorized structure, barn exceeds height limits for adjacent community lines. It included a fine, $3,150, and a deadline, comply within 10 business days or face daily penalties. Daniel stared at the paper. The barn had been there for over a decade. The community line, that was new. That same afternoon, a crew showed up, again this time to add lattice to the top of the fence. Daniel confronted them. "I told you to stop." One worker pointed to a document, signed by HOA board, says we're enhancing privacy. Daniel reached for the drill they were using. The man stepped back. And that's when Janice arrived. Again in her golf cart, sipping iced tea like she was at a garden party. "Careful, Daniel," she called out. "Interfering with a licensed contractor could be considered hostile intent." He stepped toward her. "And what do you call what you're doing?" She smiled. "Progress." Lily came out from the house holding her phone. "Dad," she said quietly, "I found the loophole. They amended the community map, but it wasn't filed with the county. It's unofficial. The whole thing's a bluff." Daniel's eyes lit up. Janice saw it, and for the first time, her smile slipped. "You lied," Daniel said. Janice set her cup down slowly. "You can't prove anything." But he could. And he would. The courtroom was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes with respect, but the kind that comes before a storm. Daniel sat in the second row, clean-cut in a dark suit, boots polished, hands folded. Next to him, Lily flipped him through a binder thicker than most textbooks. Across the aisle, Janice Lubbock adjusted her blazer. She had brought 2 HOA attorneys, both in gray suits, both looking confident, smug even. They thought this would be routine, a land dispute, a nuisance, another stubborn rancher who didn't understand zoning language. But they were wrong. The bailiff called it Morgan v. Cypress Hollow Estates Homeowners Association. And then came the twist. The judge stepped in. She wasn't from town. She wasn't from the county. She was brought in special on Daniel's request. Judge Carolyn Weaver, federal level, Southern District, known for cutting through HOA corruption like a buzzsaw through drywall. Janice blinked. She hadn't expected that. Daniel stood, introduced himself as the plaintiff. Then he said something that turned the courtroom into stone. "I'd also like the court to recognize my co-counsel, Lily Morgan, certified paralegal under Federal Rule 11 and lead researcher in HOA abuse litigation for the Texas Landowners Legal Coalition." Lily stood, calm, sharp, unshaken. Janice shifted in her seat. That was the second crack. Daniel clicked the remote. The screen came to life. Security footage. Dated, time-stamped, clear. Janice, on Daniel's land, laughing, pointing, calling the pasture perfect for community beautification. Then came the HOA flyer. Highlighted portions showing how they had altered the jurisdiction lines without county approval. Next, an email thread between board members, mocking Daniel's cowboy attitude and openly discussing how a few minor adjustments to the map could help them squeeze him out before winter. The judge's voice was low but sharp. "Mrs. Lubbock, is it true this document was distributed as official HOA policy?" Janice cleared her throat. "Well, it wasn't binding, just internal." "Answer the question," the judge snapped. "Yes." Crack number 3. Then came Lily's bombshell. She brought up the county's official GIS map, zoomed in, highlighted Daniel's parcel, highlighted the HOA's limits, color-coded the discrepancy. "There was never a legal boundary change filed," she said. "Their internal map was never recorded. Everything they did, every fishman, every structure, every inspection was outside their jurisdiction." Silence. Then Judge Weaver leaned forward. Her voice dropped. "What you've done, Mrs. Lubbock, is not beautification. It's territorial aggression. You attempted to take land that didn't belong to you. You issued illegal fines, you trespassed, and you misused association funds to do it." Janice's mouth parted. She glanced at her attorneys, but they suddenly looked very busy with their notes. "And worse," the judge continued, "you targeted Mr. Morgan repeatedly, despite written documentation that his property was explicitly exempt from your association." Lily clicked again. A final email popped up. From Janice. Subject line, "Let's push him out." That was the breaking point. The judge's gavel hit wood like thunder. "I am issuing an immediate injunction against Cypress Hollow Estates HOA. All fines against Mr. Morgan are voided. The fence must be removed within 72 hours, and the HOA is now subject to a full audit, effective immediately." Janice stood, hands trembling. "This is outrageous," she barked. The judge didn't even look at her. "Sit down." Janice sat, and the room, once silent, erupted with whispers. Daniel didn't smile. He just exhaled. 12 years on that land, 3 months of games, 2 weeks of research, 1 day in court. And now, the storm was his. By the time Daniel pulled into his driveway the next morning, the removal crew was already there. 4 men in plain work uniforms. No HOA logos. no smug expressions. They moved quickly, methodically. Each fence post was unbolted, stacked neatly in piles like discarded lies. The plastic barrier that once split his land in two now laid in fragments by the roadside, waiting for pickup. Daniel watched from his porch, coffee in hand, same spot, same boots, different air. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The town already knew. Within 24 hours of the court ruling, word had spread across Cypress Hollow like wildfire. Someone had leaked the court documents. Someone else had shared the security footage. And by lunchtime, the entire HOA board was trending on the local Facebook group under the hashtag #FenceGate. By Wednesday, things got worse for them. The county commissioner's office issued a formal warning to the HOA for unauthorized land classification. A petition to dissolve the board had gathered over 300 signatures overnight. And then, like a final nail, two reporters from Channel 7 News showed up at Janice Lubbock's door. Cameras rolling, microphones extended. "Mrs. Lubbock, did you knowingly attempt to seize private land for a community trail project?" She slammed the door, but it was too late. The clip went viral, and so did the mugshot. Because 3 days later, after the audit began, the sheriff's department arrested Janice and two board members on charges of fraudulent use of association funds, unauthorized surveillance, and criminal trespass. Apparently, HOA dues had been quietly funneled into consulting fees for the fence project. But the consultants? Fake companies. Registered under Janice's niece in Arizona. Daniel didn't gloat. He didn't need to. The truth was doing the work. One by one, neighbors who once avoided him started stopping by. Greg Simmons, one of the former board members, showed up in person. No clipboard, no attitude. Just a shaking hand. "I didn't know they'd go that far," he said quietly. "I just thought it was planning talk. I'm sorry." Daniel nodded once, then closed the door. The apology wasn't for him, it was for himself. Lily, meanwhile, had been invited to speak at a law seminar on citizen protection against HOA overreach. She wore her mother's watch and spoke with the kind of fire that made people lean in. Daniel attended, sitting in the back. Didn't say a word, just smiled. That Sunday, he rebuilt the split fence, not the fake one, but his own. The kind that marked his land. Cedarwood posts, barbed wire. No plastic, no corporate logo, just boundaries that were honest. Lily helped paint the new sign. Morgan Ranch, private property, respect earned here. As they worked, a few of the townsfolk walked by. Some waved, some clapped, and a few just nodded with a kind of respect that couldn't be bought or posted on bulletin boards. Daniel wiped his hands on his jeans. The sun was setting, and this time nothing stood between his porch and the horizon. No fence, no lies, just freedom. The land healed slower than the headlines faded. It took weeks for the grass to grow back where the fence post had scarred the pasture. Took even longer for the horses to stop eyeing that stretch of field with suspicion, like they still expected something unnatural to rise from the dirt. But Daniel understood. Some things take time. One Saturday afternoon, just before dusk, Lily brought out a box. Inside, old family photos, court transcripts, her mom's journal, and one sealed envelope addressed to the future of this land. It was written years ago. Daniel opened it slowly. Inside, a short letter. Her handwriting was neat, tight. The ink had faded in spots. "Don't let them carve up what we built. This place is more than soil and fences. It's memory. It's dignity. And when they try to take it, remind them what it costs to earn." He didn't cry. He didn't need to. The land was speaking for him now. That night, they had a bonfire. Neighbors came, some old, some new. There was food, laughter, and silence when the sun finally disappeared behind the hills. No one brought up Janice. No one had to. The HOA board had been formally disbanded. A new community-elected committee was formed, smaller, humbler, and bound by transparency. They even offered Daniel a seat. He declined. "I already did my part," he said with a grin. "Y'all can handle the lawn gnome complaints without me." They laughed, but everyone knew. Things had changed, not just because of a court ruling, but because someone had stood up, pushed back, and reminded the town what lines weren't meant to be crossed. Later that night, Daniel and Lily sat on the porch again. Same view, same quiet. The stars were brighter without all that fence lighting. Do you think Mom would have liked how it ended? Lily asked. Daniel thought for a long moment. No, he said finally. She would have liked that it began. Lily smiled. And in that silence, Daniel felt it. Not victory, not pride, something simpler, peace. Because sometimes justice doesn't come in headlines or handcuffs. Sometimes it comes in knowing that what's yours, what you love, is finally safe. And that the world saw the truth. Clear as barbed wire in morning sun. Have you ever faced a situation where someone tried to take what was rightfully yours? How far would you go to protect your home, your land, your legacy? Tell us in the comments below. And don't forget to share this video if you believe some fences were never meant to be built.